Today is World Water Day. We're talking about it on the Power Lunch as something of a theme, and a lot of companies have now tried to say we're going to save as much water as we use so that we are water neutral. And of course, South Africa faces serious threats from its scarce water supplies. It's been named as the world's most water-stressed nation and has much in common with many other regions and nations around the world, such as Australia, the southwest of the USA and northwest China. Lots of desert and limited water resources. Situation in South Africa has been called a water crisis. Now, earlier Sam spoke to Andre Fourie, who's head of sustainable development, which concerns itself very much with water resources at SAB.
I feel quite strongly that it's important to avoid all the talk about an immediate crisis, because what that tends to do is that everyone then seems to go up in arms and fight about different ways of solving the problem rather than coming to concrete and more sensible long-term solutions. So yes, we're heading for a crisis if we don't take the right decisions today.
How long? What type of time frame are we looking at?
We probably talk about 10 years if we don't have a major drought in between. I think we're one drought away from a crisis. So therefore that means that it's a tight situation, we're a water-stressed country, we're wasting water, we're not pricing it correctly. So therefore it's important that we get together with the public and the private sectors and look at sensible solutions.
Where is South Africa's water sourced from? Let's contextualize this and see where South Africa gets its water and how it manages those water resources.
Yeah, of course each catchment across the country is different with different water balances in each of the catchments, but it's well known that South Africa gets a substantial proportion of our water from the Lesotho Highlands, and therefore our catchments in Gauteng and the north from here are only as in balance as the amount of water that we get from Lesotho, and that's not a sustainable situation, and we really need to make sure that we do make sure that the long-term support from the Lesotho Highlands, but also that we use the current water that we have much more responsibly.
Okay, so let's look at it from a business angle, looking at SAB Miller in South Africa, a very intensive water industry. For every 1 litre of beer produced, you use 150 litres of water across the supply chain. So how much of a risk is a lack of water to SAB Miller? What have you identified in terms of the risk of a water crisis perhaps in 10 years down the line?
Yeah. Water obviously is very important for SAB. It's a core part of the beers that we brew, so having good quality water is essential for us. But let me just first contextualize that 155. Less than 5 litres of that 155 is what we use in the brewery. And we're working very hard on reducing that, finding new innovative ways of using less and less water.
So tell us about that before we go on to the rest of the supply chain.
Yeah, we think there are new ways of particularly managing our cleaning processes to make sure that we optimize that we use only the water that's required, that we don't necessarily need to use pristine clean water which come all the way from the Lesotho Highlands through the Vaal River system, the Rand water system into our breweries, and then wash crates or floors with it, that we can recycle water. So we're doing all range of innovative ways of cascading water backwards across our processes to make sure that we continue to use clean water in the final product and cleaning our vessels, but that across the process we can use clean water. So it's very important to understand that of that 155 litres, we're currently at about 4 litres of water for a litre of beer, which is world best practice, but we still think we can do a lot more.
Yeah, let's look at the agricultural aspect of it, and that really appears to be the biggest drain on water supplies. What are you doing to work with farmers? Because just contextualizing it from a South African point of view, 60% of water that is consumed by the agricultural sector.
Yeah, agriculture is a big water user in South Africa, and therefore for us, in our agricultural supply chain, the barley and the hops that we buy from farmers, they use a lot of water. It's also a very important part of food security, etc. So we can't take that water away. But there are ways of being more effective and efficient on the farming level. I think as a country we have a water abundance mentality, which is not in tune with the country that we live in, and just because we've really shipped water across watersheds, and it's important that we get our mindset right. So for us, firstly, of course it starts at home. It is important that we're efficient in our breweries, but we also have to look at the agricultural supply chain. So we started in the hops industry, which is quite a unique industry in South Africa. It's the only hops industry on the African continent where hops is produced, so that's around the George area. Over the last 5 years, we probably had 3 floods or 3 droughts and a flood. So quite clearly a challenging area.
So what are you doing exactly with the hops farmers there? Tell us about that project.
We've started a collaborative process working together with the WWF in terms of trying to identify what are the water risks and also what we can do about it. Certainly the big issue that's staring at us is the issue of clearing alien vegetation.
Yeah.
Many of the riverine areas are badly infected with alien vegetation across the board. And they consume a lot of water, often 50 or 60% more.
How big a task is this, though? Because I know that you had a pilot project in Cape Town in order to look at removing alien vegetation, but how hard is it going to be for South Africa to address this issue? Because that is a major drag and drain on our water resources.
It's hugely complex and very difficult. Clearing a particular square meterage of 100 by 100 meters or kilometer by kilometer, that's not the biggest issue, but to do so sustainably, to make sure that you do so in a way that when you come back in 5 years' time it's still clean, and that you do that in a way that you take out the growing vegetation first, which uses a lot more water, get to some of the older vegetation later, and also to do that in a way that doesn't disturb the landscape, and rather use manpower, get local people who are unemployed, and then employ them over a time, rather send in a team of bulldozers. That creates employment, releases water back into the area, and is very good for the environment.
Lastly, the JSE recently conducted a survey in terms of water risks for top 100 companies. The Water Disclosure Report is what that report came in the name, or what the name of the report was. Low response rate to that. But of that, what were the key findings? What stood out for you as most significant from the first round of the survey?
Firstly, of course, as South African breweries, we're very proud of the findings and the acknowledgement that SAB is one of the companies doing well in terms of understanding our water risk and working down the supply chain. But there was a very strong finding that not enough large South African corporates on the same wavelength, that don't understand the water risk substantially, and that there's not seemingly the urgency that one would expect if you look at the looming crisis that we discussed earlier on, that there isn't that urgency in the public or the private sector.